So are you set up? Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Great. Next up, we have Domenic Denicola. Is that right?
Denicola.
Denicola. Ah, sorry. I tried. Anyway, he's going to tell you about some real-world Windows 8 apps in JavaScript. I just read that off his slide. I'm sorry. I don't actually know what the content is. I hope it's going to be amazing, and I'm going to listen really closely.
It's going to be awesome.
This guy's really good. Okay.
Thank you. So apparently jaywalking isn't a thing here in Seattle. I don't know. I just found that out this morning. It is? Okay, that's good to hear. Because I came from New York and I'm like jaywalking and people are just super like, what? He just walked across the street? Yeah, all right. So anyway, so Windows 8 and so let's talk about this. So back in the day, if you remember, like way back when we all first started getting interested in computers, or at least I did, we were all very into Microsoft products. Now, I know we're in Seattle, so there's a larger proportion of Microsoft laptops than usual. But at every other conference I go to, it's a bunch of Macs. And the thing to remember about Microsoft products is it's not like the open source days where Node is still stuck on 0.8 and 0.9, and every module that Substack releases is like 0.0.0 to start, and then it stays there for a year before it becomes 1.0. In the Microsoft world, there's this concept of like a 1.0 product, and it takes that doesn't mean the same thing it does these days with open source. It really means like version 1, like we're not there yet. And if you recall, the old saying is that it takes about 3 versions for them to get where you want it to be. Like Windows 1, Windows 2, nobody really used those, but Windows 3, that's Windows 3.1, that's where people started getting interested. Same thing with Internet Explorer, version 1, version 2, whatever. Version 3 was when Netscape had a real competitor. Well, so today we have Windows 8, and I'm not here to talk about the user experience. I'm here to talk to the developer experience, but it's a very similar story. It's really a Microsoft 1.0 product from a developer experience standpoint, which means they're trying, but it's going to take them 2 more versions before it gets somewhere that you really want to use. And but I don't have 2 more versions to wait. I work for a company, BarnesandNoble.com, and we're building a Windows 8 app. And we got to bring this open source. No, just use it when it's ready. Just go, and get an app out the door instead of waiting for version 3 of the Windows 8 SDK to come around. So I'm going to talk about exactly like what we've encountered in this process of trying to get somewhere with a Microsoft 1.0 product, and going beyond like simple demo apps that you get at a lot of the Microsoft evangelist talks about how to write a Windows 8 thing. This is actual real business. So a little bit about me. So I'm on GitHub. I'm on NPM. I do a lot of Node. I also have a link here to our Noble.js organization on GitHub. This is where we put all our Barnes & Noble source code. There's a lot of Windows 8 stuff there. It's all JavaScript because we're JavaScript developers there. Things I've done recently, I have a presentation called ES6 is nigh about the next version of the language. I gave it at Empire.js. I think it's pretty neat. You should check it out. And I've somewhat gotten a reputation as the promises guy, apparently, on the internet. So I like to talk about promises, which is a asynchronous programming concept, and we've created a new spec called Promises A+. But even though that is relevant to Windows 8, we're not going to talk about it today because people already think I'm obsessed. So moving on. All right, so where am I coming from? Well, so why am I writing Windows 8 app at work? It's because we worked on this app ever since I joined about 2 years ago, called Nook Study. It's an e-textbook reader for Mac and PC. So you read your ebooks and your e-textbooks, and you take notes on them. You share them with other students. And well, I don't read e-textbooks these days, but I read a lot of Star Wars books, as you can see. But it works just the same. And what's interesting is this desktop app, runs on Mac and PC. It's written entirely in HTML5 and JavaScript. It's over 170,000 lines of code, mostly JavaScript. And I think this is interesting because a few months ago, or not even that long ago, we had the inventor of C# get up on stage and tell us, you can't write real apps in JavaScript. You need something with types. You need TypeScript. But that's definitely not been true in our experience, and I think in the experience of a lot of people who have been writing serious single-page applications or desktop applications in HTML5 and JavaScript. So I think over the last 2 years we've proven that false. And so now, what I'm working on at Barnes & Noble now, I don't think it's been officially announced, so I probably shouldn't say. But you can kind of imagine if we've been working on Nook Study in HTML5 and JavaScript for 2 years, and I've been telling you that I'm working on a Windows 8 product, that might give you some hints. So, all right. So there's really there's two things I want to cover here. There's kind of like the advanced basics, right? There's when we're talking about building a Windows 8 app. You know, what's the stuff that they're not telling you that is actually really important? Because when you go to one of these Microsoft Evangelist demos, and I went to one in New York that like changed me forever. It shaped my perception of the world and made me not trust again, because she just got up there and she just like showed us, here's Windows 8. You can scroll around with your finger and see things and press buttons, and then there's apps. And here's Visual Studio. And when you press New Project, you get a new project. And then there's the 3 files, and yay, it's an app. So that was really disappointing to me because it didn't explore any of the deeper issues involved in this framework and what they've given you. So I want to kind of give you just a little taste of like what are the concepts that you're really going to need to understand and how they're going to fit into a modern app development. So the first thing is you get 2 kind of global namespaces. You get Windows and you get Win.js. So let's talk about Windows for a little bit. It's mostly full of crap. It's full of XAML. It's full of JSON parsing, because apparently you need about 10 classes to parse JSON in every other language. It's full of some threading primitives, which are great. It's great that that's exposed to us, and so on. It has a lot of real gems that you'll have a lot of fun dealing with, because you do need to use a lot of these primitives. Sometimes like windows.graphics.display.displayProperties.resolutionScale, or windows.ui.notifications.toastDataNotificationManifer.createToastNotifier, windows.globalization.datetime format.short data format. I mean, this is awesome. I just wanted to format my date to be in the short date format, and I had to type that. So that's cool, but you will have to do those. And so maybe you'll write a library. Actually, I want to show you an example of something we wrote that wraps up some of this. So here's how you create a toast notification in Windows 8 using this Windows namespace. Oh, you can't see it because it's on the other screen. Clever. All right. Here is how you create a toast notification. Yeah, you create an XML template and you set attributes, and then you get the element and you set more. There's XML here, guys. XML. Yeah, so that's fun, and you have to not only do you create the template and from the toast notification manager. You know, didn't you ever hear like never create classes named manager? I don't know, that just felt like a 101 to me. Then you create the notification from the template, and then you create the notifier, I think is what that is over there, and then you take the notifier and you show the toast. So this is great. What you need to do is you need to create a library where it reduces to this. So that's the kind of stuff we've been doing. And I want you guys to do that too, because there's a lot of this stuff in the Windows namespace that you need to stop writing XML for and start writing JavaScript. So that's that. Here's a few more useful looking, okay, let's go back to presenter view. Here's a few more useful looking namespaces that you probably will want to, No. Shift F5? There we go. All right, a few more useful looking namespaces that we'll want to wrap up. Somebody else besides us should probably write these. But I'm sure they're just as nightmarish and just as complex. But this is where the power of Windows 8 comes in. This is where you get access to things like device sensors and storage pickers and notifications from the internet. So those are room for further exploration. All right, now let's talk about the JavaScript specific stuff. That goes under the Win.js namespace. And when I say namespace, by the way, I mean global variable. We'll talk a bit more about their obsession with global variables later. But namespaces. So there's a few good parts of the Win.js namespace. There's the application lifecycle stuff, just when it suspends, resumes, starts, whatever. There's some resource string loading. Okay, that's good. I mean, it's always good to be able to localize your stuff. And then there's the controls. And this is a big subject. We'll talk a little bit more about this. But this gives you all the native behavior, like an app bar or a settings pane or a all the different crazy things that you can put. A list view, it looks like the start menu. And so you want to use those. You want to utilize those. But there's a lot of stuff in here you don't want to use. And you're going to see it used in all the demos that the Microsoft people put out, but you're going to not want to use it. So like, they have this utilities class, which is full of amazing functions like add CSS class, remove CSS class. We know how to do that, guys. We have jQuery. We have class lists. Like, we can do this ourselves. They have this whole fragments and navigation and pages concept, which is like this weird way of loading their templates and their router, which is like a crippled router. It doesn't actually have routes. It just has like history, but you can push state and pop. I don't know. Don't use this stuff. Use other libraries. We know how to build HTML5 apps without using these weird Microsoft-only primitives. Like, they could have just leveraged any other library, but instead they built this up and they're pushing it on you. So don't do that. Even better, WinJS class and WinJS namespace. WinJS namespace is a method for declaring global variables. That's awesome. WinJS class is yet another class library. So don't do that. Just type prototype. It's not that scary. And finally, my favorite, WinJS.binding. It's one-way data binding. In 2012, guys, one way. Not two-way, one way. Don't use that. All right, let's talk about the controls, because this is like the biggest area that you're going to have to struggle with and understand. Like, if I want to take away one like super technical point from this talk, it's about the controls. So you write a control like this. You know, you put these data attributes on the divs or whatever, on the buttons, and that'll magically transform it into a Windows 8 control. Well, what's the magic involved here? It's this function called WinJS UI process all. So this concept of processing a control to turn it into like an actual Windows 8 UI element. And in particular, they get a win control property where all the actual stuff happens and hangs off. And the good news is that they actually implemented these things entirely in HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS. These aren't like object tags in disguise. They actually create a bunch of HTML and JavaScript and CSS that completely emulates the native platform. So it's completely transparent how it works. It's really nice. And it takes care of a lot of stuff for you. So you really want to end up using these things because they'll take care of accessibility, they'll take care of contrast changes, the user changes their theme, they change their resolution scale, everything is the tab order, you know, everything is taken care of for you. So you really do want to end up using these controls. And you can even avoid this kind of inline attribute style with this function, this kind of undocumented function called WinJS UI set options. That allows you to not do things like put, oh, here's a data source as a global variable or my click handler or whatever. Because otherwise you just have these attributes and the only thing they can reference is global variables. And global variables make me sad because it's 2012, guys. The bad news about these controls is that they generate a lot of HTML. I mean, I know for a fact that with the CSS technology of IE10, we could have just turned that button element into a fully functioning button. I've done that. But instead they generated 3 spans to give you like the ring and the image and the label. Yeah, that's okay. And a click eater, which is a section, totally a semantic section. If you put that in your outlining algorithm, that would make sense. But you can't get away from these controls. So you have to use them. Like it's too much for you to do yourself. All right, so minor demo time, just to kind of give you an overview of like what we've talked about so far is kind of just what you get out of the box. So what do you get out of the box? Well, if you create a new project, and this is kind of leading into the next section to talk about how this isn't really going to work for you. Oh, mirror. All right, if you create a new project, you get this kind of great setup where they're hard coding in some CSS and some JS, and then, oh, hey, back in the days when we had like script tags in our head instead of a module system. Okay, so every time I want to add a new script, I'll be going back to my default.html and adding it there. Okay. And then you have like these controls, and as you can see, like it's like I was saying, they have this crazy page control, which is their way of loading templates dynamically. And I mean, the way that they talk to each other is through namespaces, right? WinJS namespace define data. That's a global variable. No, not kidding. You get all these like fragments of pages they load in, and there's a bunch of controls. Well, okay, let's just run this, see what happens. So you get this demo app, and this is exactly the type of thing I got shown that shattered my worldview of like trust in Microsoft evangelists. And just to give you an idea, right? Like, so we have this app bar, and as I said, like it generates all this HTML for you. So you kind of want to dig in and see what exactly is going on here. And even better, like in the content host, you get a page control with a header template and an item template, which are just hanging out in your DOM for fun. The fragment, it's got a header. Oh my god, how many levels deep is this, guys? I don't know. Oh wait, what's that? It's a data ping. Oh my god, they embedded some pings directly in the markup. Oh, position absolute, left 0, top 0, width. You're not going to be able to override that without important. Man. And this is my favorite. Yeah, we're at my favorite part. These are the parts of a list view. So you get left 0, width 780, opacity 1, left 850. Oh, wow, they're like manually calculating the left offsets and setting them. Wow. So all this fancy technology like Flexbox and grid layout that they're so proud of for IE10? No. Absolute positioning, calculate it with JavaScript, stuff it on the controls. The controls are bad, guys, but they're necessary. We can't avoid them. We need to integrate them into our workflow. Otherwise, it's too much work. But they're bad. So be careful out there. That's it for that demo. Yeah. No. All right, so cooking with gas, right? So we got that stupid app. We saw how they put it together, and that's as far as most of these talks go. But what do we really need to get moving and build real Windows 8 apps? Well, in 2012, what do we exactly expect? Well, we expect some basic things like, say, a module system, a package ecosystem so we can pull down other people's code and use it, a way to stop writing raw CSS, write Sass, write stylus, and even for HTML, we write like Jade or Handlebar or Haml or whatever. And some people like CoffeeScript and TypeScript, so we can get another language. And all this really means is we need a build process, which is completely not accounted for in any of the Microsoft tooling. They expect you to be writing the raw things, and basically back in the early 2000s, where you just stuff things into your index.html and go from there. So we have a build process that we created, and it's kind of fiddly to get working, but it does a lot for you. It uses Browserify, so you can get nice node modules. You can pull them straight from NPM, collaborate with each other. It uses Grunt, so you can plug in any kind of build task that you want. It uses Jade, so you can write not HTML. It uses Stylus, so you can write not CSS. And it's fairly configurable, so if you want to use Sass or if you want to use CoffeeScript or whatever, you can plug that in as well. So you check that out. But you need some kind of build process, and it's kind of fiddly to integrate that into Visual Studio. The next big thing is in 2012, how do we structure our apps? Well, we of course we use an MV Star framework, and no, that doesn't mean like pages and fragments and navigation. This means something real, like something that people have actually developed in the open for years and used in battle-tested apps. So something like Angular or Backbone or Ember or Knockout or anything else. The problem is you need to integrate these guys into WinJS controls, because as I've been emphasizing, as bad as they are, we need them. They do so much for us. And so there's this whole life cycle where they get turned from inert HTML elements into real controls that behave strangely, and you have to work around that. And so we've written up something like that to integrate with Knockout, but it's really immature. I don't really want to show it off to anybody. It is open source. You can check it out. Just to give you an idea, like how do you fit this control lifecycle into your MVVM, MV Star framework? And I want you guys to come up with your own if you're going to get serious about writing Windows 8 apps. Somebody who likes Backbone should just go out there and say, how do I get Windows 8 controls into Backbone and make that work with Backbone views? And again, emphasize, don't use navigation or pages or fragments. We know how to solve these problems. There are libraries that do this. Use like a real router, a real templating system, a real way of getting your templates into your app. Don't, just because they're there and they're in all the demos, don't do that. And for the love of God, don't use one-way data binding. All right, and finally, the biggest thing, how do we write code these days, right? Well, first we write our tests. Too bad there's no support for this at all. Not even a tiny bit. There is no way to run unit tests in a Windows 8 environment. So all those access to the WinJS and Windows APIs, you can't do it. I mean, and what I mean by this, right, is to do this, you have to do like weird stuff. So one idea is you have to take your normal app, create a hidden screen where you press a button and now it runs all your unit tests. This isn't very automatable. And of course, it's very manual, right? You have to actually take over your screen to use this. One approach we went down for a while was to try and stub everything. So we had the virtual DOM with JS DOM, a Node package. We stubbed a bunch of WinJS and Windows, and we ran our tests in Node. And this was great. I mean, that was pretty fast. You could actually run those like on every commit. But it got to the point where we were stubbing way too much. So like you end up rewriting large portions of the Windows API because you're like, oh, I need this to behave this way. So I don't think that's maintainable going forward, and we've kind of abandoned that. What we're trying now, and it's not really there yet, is to somehow automate. And I want to show you guys this code because I'm pretty proud of it. And the reason I'm proud of it, as you'll see shortly, is that it's C++. So yeah, it turns out this is the only way to programmatically launch a Windows 8 application, believe it or not. Not even C#, you need C++. So I don't know, this is like COM, I guess, co-create instance, H results, cool. Yeah, so this allows us to programmatically launch a Windows 8 application, and I'm thinking a Windows 8 application that looks something like this. It just starts itself, and then somehow we're going to run the tests, and then we're going to close ourselves. So if I can get that running, then the only problem is that it takes over my screen while this is going on, because there's no support for headless testing. So maybe I can get like a Surface and hook that up to my computer and use the remote debugging features so that when I commit my changes, it runs my tests on the Surface, and hopefully that won't be slow, but I think it will be. But maybe it'll be okay. That's my best solution right now. Yeah, that's most like, those are the issues. Oh my God, Windows 8's cool. I mean, like, you thought you'd come and you'd get like a Windows 8 talk at this conference from somebody who works at Microsoft, but no, that's not what you're getting. So all right, well, my last slide is clearly never going to show up, but basically, the point I wanted to make with it was, where do we go from here? And I mean, I despite all my complaints, which are really out of love, I think this is a good platform. I think it's a cool app store that's just opening up. I think it's got some innovative UI concepts. And I think it's really impressive that they're actually trying to make HTML5 and JavaScript a first-class citizen, right? Like, that's not something Apple would ever do. It's something that Mozilla does, but no, I don't know anybody with a Firefox OS phone. So it'd be really cool if we actually had an ecosystem where we could write HTML5 and JavaScript apps and get them published on a major platform and have people actually like buy them. We just need to give Microsoft a little help. We can't wait for version 3.0 because if we do, then they'll be dead because nobody will be writing apps, and then iOS will win. And we can't have iOS win because we're in Seattle. And so, what we need is we need you guys to get involved. If you want to write Windows 8 apps, we need to make this an open source thing. We need to stop like having people publish things to the store and never put them online. We need libraries, we need tooling, we need frameworks, we need people to work on integrating with the other MVVMs. We need people to solve this unit testing problem, or have Microsoft solve it. Just like if all of us who are developing it get together with our developer relations people and say, please make this a priority, maybe that'll happen. But I think we're mostly on our own. And we need to publish cool libraries that each other can use. And I think NPM is a good way to do this with the Browserify. But I mean, do it your own way. People like Require.js, they like Jam.js. Like, okay, as long as we're collaborating, as long as there's more open. Like, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on in the open source space, but it's mostly not focused around Windows 8 apps. Those are mostly developed in-house or by contractors or whatever. And I think that's a real shame. So, try and get involved, and to start, just come and talk to me if you want to see what we're doing and want to get started. So that's it.